It's now 4 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing or advisory committee meetings, and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact pac@london.ca. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest from the committee? I don't see any, so I'll move on to the consent items. I know that Councillor Hopkins had asked that 2.1 be pulled. Are there any other items that councillors wish to pull? I also see Councillor Cassidy's here. She might be interested in 2.1, and it's been pulled. Any other items to be pulled from the agenda? All right, can I get a mover and seconder for the remaining items? Moved by Councillor Lehman, seconded by Councillor Hillier. Any comments on any of the items that have not been pulled? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And as you can see, there's a number of consent items in my ward on the agenda. It's a very busy ward. And I just want to make a quick comment on 2.2, which is a special provision for W3 Farms subdivision, phase 1, and 2.6, which is phase 2 of Heathwood subdivision. And just wanted to say that these are two subdivisions aligning and coming together. And I just want to, it's an unusual situation to find these two subdivisions working in conjunction with one another, and they're both owned by different developers, but they are working forward, working together and working with the city to bring forward these two subdivisions with a number of special provisions that, as you can see, are noted in the consent item. And just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other comments on any of the consent items? There being none, and it's been moved and seconded, I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 4-0.
I'll circle back to item 2.1. Councillor Hopkins, you wanted to comment on that, and possibly Councillor Cassidy, so I'll let you two can decide who's going to. You can both. Oh, Councillor Cassidy likes to go last, I know, so Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank the councillor for being here too. I know this was a contentious, quite a lengthy application process, and the community was very, very much engaged with a number of changes and revisions. And as you can see, council also directed the approval authority to look at other opportunities with the fencing and landscaping. And I know at that time as well, and I'm really glad the councillor is here to speak to them, but at the time I know construction on Donnybrook, there was a conversation in the community, and just in case community members are listening in, I think I'd like to go through you to staff just to sort of have an idea of what the construction route is going to look like as this application proceeds.
Go ahead, staff. Someone could address that.
Thank you. Through the chair, it's Bruce Page speaking. The construction traffic is going to be directed through the site plan onto Fanshawe Park Road. That's where the main entrance and exit will be. It's within the site plan agreement that there's not to be access onto Donnybrook. Recognizing that there may be some inadvertent traffic that would cut through there, we've spoken with the developer and asked him to address this situation. So he's indicated that he's going to address all his subcontractors and staff not to access out onto Donnybrook. The question would be, if they turn right onto Fanshawe, would they turn right in to get to the lights? And he's going to direct them not to. He's going to do his best efforts not that they would have traffic onto Donnybrook, and that they direct it all onto Fanshawe. There will be a small window where Donnybrook will be affected because they do have to connect for servicing to the site, and it will be closed for a couple days for that servicing, but that would be the only impact to Donnybrook.
Thank you. Councillor? Anything
Yeah,
else?
thank you for that. I think it's really important that the community understands that there's some work being done to come up with the route and to do everything possible to keep it onto Fanshawe. Looking forward to hearing the councillors' comments as well. Thank you.
Councillor Cassidy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for recognizing me at your committee. We had actually a Zoom meeting last week with city staff and with members of the community, because as Councillor Hopkins noted, this was quite a contentious issue when it came up back in 2017. So I just want to ask staff what, aside from the traffic, which was a concern of the community, even in the last meeting that we had, what about site plan issues, cleanliness of site, debris and dirt, that sort of thing? How will city staff work to make sure that there's bound to be impact? Construction always has an impact on surrounding communities, but wonder what the plan is for city staff or for the developer to mitigate as much as possible these impacts.
Staff? Mr. Page again?
This one is Heather McNeely.
Sorry.
I'll take this inquiry, and thank you, Councillor Cassidy, for the comment. And as you indicated, we did discuss this with the area residents last week. In terms of the dirt and debris, we did provide them with an actual email portal that they can call us as well. The expectation is that the site and the dirt leaving the site be cleaned. And that is a requirement in a clause in the development agreement. However, sometimes it's impossible to keep it clean, and especially in wet weather, it makes it very challenging. So we did provide the email portal for the compliance team to then would follow up with the developer. And again, the developer has indicated that they would be doing their best efforts to keep the site clean. And to address any of the construction traffic and how those mitigation measures would be addressed as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thanks. So I just want to say thank you to city staff. Thanks to Ms. McNeely and Mr. Page and Mr. Pease, who participated in the virtual meeting last week. And also they conducted a site meeting with area residents who are most directly affected, because there will be some fencing plans, some landscaping plans, all sorts of things that will go forward to mitigate the impact on the adjacent homes. This was, as we all know, this was a contentious development plan application. The community were really upset from the very beginning, but I want to say thanks to the community for continuing to stay involved and to continue to work constructively to do what works for their community, to lessen the impact as much as possible on the neighborhood, and continuing to work with city staff, again, very constructively, as sort of a, what can we all do to make this the best possible thing for the neighborhood. So city staff, as I said, have been very diligent in working with the community and trying to address all of their concerns. Infill developments are always troublesome for the neighboring community. It's always a big change, and I think the community has really come together in taking the next steps and continuing to make sure that this is as good as it can possibly be for the neighborhood. And I know that city staff will stay on top of this. I know there are plans to make sure that everything goes according to plan. And that said, I can't say thanks enough to everybody that's been involved, and looking forward to getting this underway and done.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything else from anyone? All right, I just need this to be moved and seconded. Moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Lewis. Anything further? There being nothing, I will call the vote.
Chair, if you don't mind, I'm going to vote verbally tonight, and I will vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Moving on, 3.1 is the delegation 11 chair of the Environmental and Ecological Planning Advisory Committee, and also with their third report. So is Mr. Levin online? Perfect.
Mr. Levin, I believe you are on.
I see Mr. Levin now on his. Can you hear me, Mr. Levin?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chair.
Great. We're just introduced you, so you can go ahead with your delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to call to attention to the committee 3 items tonight. One on page 113 of your agenda, part of the EPAC report, item 4.1, the Byron gravel pit bank swallows. We had a very good discussion and update from city staff regarding this threatened species under the Endangered Species Act of Ontario. Good news was that the owner of the property will not be doing work on the site while the birds are nesting. We're still hopeful that the city will take some action ahead of the development to take that area into city ownership, because it is designated in the area plan for parkland. Also wanted to draw your attention to page 114, 4.6, which is the one specific action we're asking PEC to request of civic administration, is this development, which is taking place at Hamilton Road and Commissioners Road East. What we were concerned about, and we had a very good discussion, Mr. Barrett was part of that discussion. I've given Mr. Yeomans a heads up that there was, subsequent to the EIS, and you'll see it on page 118 of your agenda, a bridge and a pathway that were added through the ESA and in the ESA buffer, which surprised us because in general, that kind of thing occurs in an EIS, not in the subdivision process. So I was hoping staff would clarify if this was kind of a one-off situation that just happened to happen here, but was irregular and won't be happening again. Further, the particular pathway stops right now at the storm pond that you can sort of see on the maps. And we're hoping that EPAC will be involved in the discussion of where that extension of the pathway goes, because we're hoping it's not in the environmentally significant area that's there, and also not in the buffer. I can pause now, Mr. Chair, or I can raise the third matter with you right now.
Why don't I get staff to comment on what you've raised so far and see what they have to say? Someone from staff could respond.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Page can provide you with information on that.
Thank you.
Through you, the chair. We did have a very good discussion at EPAC. Thank you, Sandy. That was very helpful. The bridge that's being proposed was sort of anticipated right from the outset of this plan of subdivision, which goes back quite a bit of time. The bridge itself is a unique situation. As Mr. Levin spoke to it as a one-off, that truly is what it is. It was put in place there to clear span the natural heritage feature so that it didn't go southerly to the bottom tip. It would leave area south of that for compensation and could be naturalized more. So it was identified at the narrowest point of the feature, and again, it was to be a clear span bridge over top of that natural heritage feature, which would link the pathway in. And as we spoke at the meeting, at the EPAC meeting, We haven't been able to secure lands to connect from the storm pond to what's known as White's Bridge, which connects a path that's on the, we'll call it the south side of Hamilton Road. The existing path stops at White's Bridge. We haven't been able to secure the land yet, so the actual alignment's not known. But as we discussed, EPAC could be involved with the alignment of that pathway when we're able to acquire the lands. There's probably about 5 or 6 different options that could be or that are being contemplated, and there may be additional ones, but definitely we could include EPAC with those discussions.
All right. I heard them say one-off, and then they said you could be involved. So I'm not sure if that addresses the issues that you've raised. I'm hoping it does.
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair.
Great. So
Thank you.
Perhaps we can move on to your next. Councillor Hopkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just since we're just dealing with these 2 items, I'd just like to go back to the first item that Mr. Levin talked about, which was the Byron pit. That's the Byron pit secondary plan. I know is a important plan in the community that I represent, and I know also the bank swallows are important. And I would like to ask, maybe through you to staff, can the community anticipate an open house in the near future with the conversation around the secondary plan, and as we move forward? Just wondering what the plans are.
Staff, someone can answer that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Barrett would probably be best to answer that.
Thank you to the chair. And actually, I was going to follow up with Mr. Page, but short answer is we're actually looking to get something before this summer to bring something forward. We've been holding off just because there has been a lot of public involvement in this area, and we're trying to figure out how to best get back to the public before we actually have the final recommending meeting in front of planning committee. So we've been sort of brainstorming as to what the best way is to try to touch base with the community, because they have been so involved with this process, and not just have them come back at the Plan Environment Committee. But we were hoping to do that before the end of this summer. I don't know if Mr. Page has got anything else to add to that.
Mr. Page?
No, that's a great summary of that. And through chair to Councillor Hopkins, Mr. Levin indicated we had a discussion about the bank swallows and the protection of them. We have spoken with the property owner who had done some filling in last year in compliance with the rehabilitation plan for the Byron gravel pits and his portion of it. And he's not actively seeking out fill for that area or for his portion of the site. So it shouldn't impact the breeding season for the bank swallows.
Okay. And we'll move on to Mr. Levin's final matter, I think you said, other than obviously the report itself.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chair. I was directing staff committee's attention to a couple of items that are on page 30 and page 106 of your agenda dealing with the special provisions. And in the special provisions, this has been for at least 20 or 25 years, a requirement of proponent to provide homeowners adjacent to open space or natural areas with an education package. And frankly, we're just not sure if an education package is effective in getting the kind of subsequent behaviors in new subdivisions. So EPAC over time has made some suggestions to staff. I know Mr. Yeomans has been working on special provisions and changes to development agreements. We think that permanent signage is going to be much more effective. We're happy as EPAC to do some research if staff would like us to do some work on best management practices and so forth. But I think it's time that this is reviewed. If it's not effective, the proponent shouldn't be paying for it, and we should be moving to something that is effective. So that's the ask today, Mr. Chair.
And I think I'm going to just turn things over to Councillor Hopkins, because I think she had a motion related to that, and that can be discussed. Councillor, maybe we can get that on the floor.
Yeah, maybe I'll just put the motion on the floor. I have passed it on to the chair and to the clerks, but I will read it for members of the committee. And the motion is that staff be requested to report back on whether to continue with the education package as part of special provisions or to replace it with a requirement to post descriptive signage about the adjacent natural features. EPAC be asked to research best practices in other cities for ideas for best informing new residents why it is important to appreciate and protect the adjacent feature. I'd like to put that on the floor, and I guess I'm looking for a seconder as well.
All right, thank you very much. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hillier is seconding that, so it's on the floor. I think that's, the idea was that would be responsive to what Mr. Levin had requested, and he's indicated that EPAC would be happy to do some research. So it's not requiring anything at this point, it's just for a report back. So I'll open up to the committee for any kind of discussion. Doesn't appear to be any, so I'll go ahead, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, if I could just add my comments. I think this is important. We've had a number of applications at this committee backing onto natural features, and it is something that, you know, as a ward councillor, we're all responsible and have concerns about. And I'm from the city of Toronto, and believe it or not, there's an environmentally sensitive area in a park, High Park, which is where I used to live, and they're able to put some signage up for people even using the park, and I found it very effective. And this was pre-pandemic, and given the use of our parks and our ESAs, it's going to become even more important. And I really hope that the committee members do support this motion going forward. And thank you to EPAC for doing a lot of the heavy lifting here.
Thank you very much. Anything further before we vote on this motion? All right, I'll call the vote.
Sure, I'll support.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hillier.
Yes, I have nothing on the screen.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Levin, you had 3 matters, and you're going to push your luck and try for anything more, or we just want the
No,
rest
I'm
of
not,
the
Mr. Chair. I said 3 and that's it.
3 is good. That's a good day's work. So I think we need a motion to receive and file the committee report. So if we could just do that. Moved by Mayor Holder, seconded by Councillor Hopkins. Unless there's something further, I'll call the vote.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
6-0.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levin. Again, we of your committee, we're well aware of the time and energy that you put into your work and the expertise that's on that committee. So you can give them all our thanks from the planning committee. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next matter is item 3.2, which is a public participation meeting with regard to 526 Oxford Street East. So I just need a motion to open the public participation meeting. Mayor Holder, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Unless there's something further, I will call the vote.
Yes, Chair, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Hillier, please.
Something's going on with my internet. Vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
And I see, do you have a report? Sorry.
Mr. Campbell is the agent.
Oh,
Unless staff has this.
is there a staff report? Sorry, Ms. Nichols, I see you on the screen. I don't know what. You're on mute now. You're on mute. I can't hear you because you're on mute.
Hello?
Are you with the applicant?
I am the applicant.
Okay, that's fine. I was just trying to determine who you were. I saw you on the screen. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. Mr. Campbell?
Okay, yeah, no problem.
We'll come to you in a second. I want to see if there's a staff presentation.
Yes, yeah. Matt should be on soon.
Hi, Councillor. It's Craig Smith, City of London Planning, City Planner. I'm the
Thank
one
you.
who provided the staff report.
Thank you.
And you also have a very quick presentation on the application that's before you as part of the added agenda.
You can proceed.
Okay. When we start with the second slide with the location map, the property is located at the corner of Oxford Street and William Street, and which is just west of Adelaide Street. The property, next slide, property is existing. It was a former financial office, I believe. It is now vacant. The applicant is now proposing to put a hair salon, I believe a personal service establishment, a hair salon on the first floor of the building. And to do that, they require an amendment to the zoning bylaw. The requested amendment is there's twofold. This is one of those situations where the London plan, the urban corridor permits the use. It permits a wide range of mixed uses on the corridor that supports transit, various transit uses, including walking, biking, and of course our transit facilities, our LTC. But the official plan needs to have a special policy added to bring it up to speed with the London plan. So that's the first amendment, is to the official plan to allow for the personal service establishment to be located at this location. And then the second amendment is to the zoning bylaw, and the zoning bylaw is to amend the existing zone to add a special provision which also incorporates and permits for the personal service establishment of 140 square meters. One of the permissions is to allow for the existing parking, which is on the next slide, which shows 4 parking spaces in the rear yard to remain. Those are the ones that would have a special policy. The zoning can only apply on the land, so we can only allow for 4 parking spaces that exist on the lands. The balance of the parking is in the boulevard. There is 2 existing parking spaces that are permitted to be through a boulevard parking agreement. The balance of the parking spaces are non-conforming spots, and we're suggesting that the applicant could pursue or look into a further boulevard parking agreement, maybe to allow those to be incorporated. So the special provisions would allow for 4 parking spaces and a 0-meter setback from the parking to the lot line. Just to let you know that William Street is a 40-meter road allowance, so it's unusual to have this much room in the boulevard that isn't actually part of the property. So that's why the boulevard parking agreement was allowed in the first place, for the 2 additional spaces. Having said all that, the inclusion of the personal service use at this location is appropriate. It does meet the intent of the provincial policy statements. It meets the intent of the official plan and the London plan, as it allows for a mix of uses that will serve the community. The amendment of the zoning bylaw will permit the service established with the conforming parking, and the proposed amendment represents good planning and is an appropriate use of the lands. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any technical questions only from the committee? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a technical question for Mr. Smith, and I appreciate the update here in the presentation. The boulevard parking, I'm not exactly sure how that works. If you can sort of further explain that. When I look at the map, I see there's additional parking because of that wide boulevard, but if this is approved and moved forward, would it be up to the applicant to proceed with the boulevard parking? And is this how it's going to look like? I just would like further understanding of the extra parking that may be required.
Thank you, Councillor.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. As shown on the map that I had put in with the presentation, yes, as noted, there's the 2 blue spaces are the actual 2 spaces that are permitted right now with the boulevard parking agreement with the City of London. The balance of the lands are non-conforming spaces. So the request, and we're satisfied that the existing parking condition, excluding the non-conforming conditions that are there, can accommodate parking, can accommodate the use, as parking can be provided on William Street, and also alternative forms of transportation can be taken to the site. But what we're suggesting is that that the applicant would go and apply for a boulevard parking to see if they could create more spaces in the boulevard, if that's appropriate. But if not, like I said, as indicated, the existing situation is sufficient to accommodate the proposed use.
Thank you. Mayor Holder?
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm somewhat familiar with that area with Boulevard Parking, and insofar as our family businesses at Waterloo and Oxford, just down the street. But I thought that was, if I recall, for the Boulevard Parking that we applied for as well, which, by the way, is a bit misleading. It just means the right from the center of the road to the property line controlled and owned by the city, and you can rent that, which we did. But ours was a 30-foot. So I'm just trying to understand how one gets to go from 30 to 40. Is that a function just of, is that a geographic designation, or is it just depending on how the space is configured?
Mr. Smith?
Through you, Chair. The reference to the 40-meter road allowance is the actual distance from one side of the property line across the street to the other side of the property line. In the old neighborhood, Old North neighborhood, was laid out with these incredibly large at the time, I believe it was, as the military liked, it was these wide boulevards, and the boulevard is actually 40 meters wide from one property line across the street to the other property line. I wasn't referring to the size of the actual parking spaces in the boulevard themselves.
And I understood that last point to be the case. Thank you very much for that clarity, though. So it isn't. It's a function of the size of the property itself, not not necessarily that in one spot it's 31, it's 40 just by geography.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other technical questions? There being none, then we're going to go to the public, and I'll let the applicant speak first. And Mr. Campbell, I wonder, you've heard a little bit of talk about parking, so it would be wise probably to address the issue of what your client's plans are with regard to that boulevard parking that has to be applied for. That would be helpful, I think.
Sure. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. My name is Matt Campbell. I'm with Silinka Priamo here on behalf of the applicant, Tara Nichols. I'm in agreement with everything that Mr. Smith has said. We've reviewed the draft bylaw and are certainly in agreement with that, and certainly would encourage Planning Committee to endorse the proposal. I think we can all agree that this is a valuable and desired use along this portion of Oxford Street. And I can tell you, we're going to be coming in with more applications for similar type uses in the immediate area very soon. It's consistent with the direction that Council has set forward in the London plan. And we're very excited for these types of uses to be coming on board on this section of Oxford Street. In regards to the boulevard parking, what I can say is that this is an existing situation that has existed for quite some time. When my client, Tara Nichols, purchased the property, the boulevard parking was already existing. At this time, there's no plans to change that. The parking situation functions well for the site. And as Mr. Smith pointed out, completely sufficient for the operation of both the existing building and the building as it's proposed to be used. So we don't have any concerns about the boulevard parking right now. And if my client wants to take further steps and look at a different parking configuration, perhaps she may do that in the future. I don't believe that there's any proposal to do that at this time. I don't believe I have anything more to add to the discussion other than the questions that have already been asked and the information provided by Mr. Smith. I will ask if my client Tara has anything else to add for the committee's consideration. Now is your opportunity, Tara, to address the committee and provide any other information that they may wish to learn about the use.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you anymore. We could see you before. Now we're just hearing you, which is sufficient. That's fine.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there.
Don't worry.
Yes, we purchased this building 6 to 8 months ago. My husband does Botox and filler, so under medical is kind of what our real estate agent, I guess, did. We had a commercial agent. He knew we had a hair salon as well. We're a small business. We've been open 3 years. With COVID, this has been a tough year in general, but we did go through the right measures when we bought the building. We just trusted our agent. I guess should have called the city, and it's our first commercial buy, and we've learned our lesson. But it's a small business. It's our family business. We're just excited to get up and going again. We're renting a temporary location, which isn't in the best neighborhood, so we're excited to move because this was a very stressful time of year with COVID and everything else. But we're going to take great care of that building. We've already, repainted the parking lot, working on the gardens. We painted the building. We're going to be great tenants. We're just hoping that we can, move forward with both of our businesses, not just my husband's. And that's what we had bought the business for. So hopefully you guys can allow this to go through, and we will be great commercial property owners.
Thank you very much. You're very lucky. You're proposing a development in Ward 6, which, as most of my colleagues know, is the best ward in the city of London, bar none. So that's a really good start. Now they're all rolling their eyes.
Certainly one of 14, Chair.
All right. All right. So with that, we'll see if there's anybody else from the public that wants to address the committee. Is there anyone? There doesn't appear to be anyone, so I'll ask for public participation once, twice, 3 times. Motion to close the public participation meeting by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by the mayor. Vote.
I'll vote yes, Chair.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
All right, I'll turn it over to the committee. Is someone prepared to move the staff? Moved by Councillor Lehman, seconded by Mayor Holder. Anything further? The only comment I would make, all joking aside, is you are be moving into the ward that I represent, and I have not heard of a single objection to you moving ahead with your small business. So best of luck to you and getting it up and running and growing your business. With that, we'll call the vote.
Chair, happy to vote yes.
Closing the vote, the
We'll now move on to item 3.3, which is a public participation meeting with regard to 1737 Richmond Street. And I just need a motion to open the public participation meeting, moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Lehman. If there's nothing further, I will call the vote.
I'll vote yes, Chair.
Councillor Hopkins, please. Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Application?
Yes, there is. Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
This is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the property municipally addressed as 1701 to 1730.
I wonder if you could, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Could you speak up a little bit? You're very faint right now.
Oh, my apologies. Is that better? Better, Mr. Chair?
It is better, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, so this is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the property municipally addressed as 1701 to 1737 Richmond Street, located on the northwest corner of Richmond Street and Fanshawe Park Road West. The site is currently developed as a commercial shopping center containing a number of existing buildings, including 1 newly constructed building and 2 additional buildings currently under construction. The applicant has requested to amend the existing associated shopping area commercial special provision zone to add food store as a permitted use, as well as recognize the existing gross floor area of 17,950 square meters and permit 550 parking spaces for all permitted uses. The existing special provisions prohibiting grocery stores and supermarkets and regulating office uses would continue to apply to the site. The proposed food store would be located within the existing buildings on site. No new additional gross floor area beyond what currently exists is proposed. It should be noted that as part of the original request, the applicant also requested to permit a minimum setback of 1.5 meters between existing parking spaces and the ultimate road allowance. Through the review of the application, it was determined that this special provision was not required, as the general provisions of the zoning bylaw deem setbacks reduced by road widening dedications to comply. And so as such, the existing parking spaces are permitted as is, and any new parking spaces would be required to comply with a minimum 3-meter setback. Approximately 72 of the existing parking spaces on site encroach into the city road allowance due to previous road widening dedications. These spaces are functional and are recognized in the short term by an executed boulevard parking agreement. However, they are not counted towards the required parking as their long-term existence is not guaranteed. The applicant has as such requested to permit 550 parking spaces for all permitted uses. The site is designated enclosed regional commercial node in the 1989 official plan and is subject to a specific area policy which prohibits grocery stores and supermarkets and regulates office uses. The enclosed regional commercial node designation permits all types of large and small scale retail outlets, including food stores. The site is also in the transit village place type of the Lennon Plan, permitting a broad range of uses, including retail. Staff is satisfied that the recommended amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement. The proposed food store is contemplated in both the 1989 official plan and the Lennon Plan, and the requested parking reduction assists in achieving the goals of the provincial policy statement and the transit village place type, including reducing the number of vehicle trips to and from the site. As such, the recommended amendment is in conformity with the 1989 official plan and the Lennon Plan, and it is recommended the amendment be approved. Thanks, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you very much. Any technical questions from the committee? Mayor Holder?
Thanks very much, Chair. From you, through you to staff, I've been looking at the report that's been provided, and I acknowledge the building that is currently going up on that corner now. And I just want to confirm, just because there's been a reference to Michael's retail and this food store and so I just want to clarify in my mind exactly what is going where. For example, where that food store will precisely be located. Is it in that new development structure, or will it be in the current, and there's going to be some mix and move? Could you just help me with that, please, a little bit?
Go ahead, Scott.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Staff is unaware at this time where the proposed food store is going to be located. Perhaps the applicant will be able to address this question and provide a little more detail on where on site the food store will be situated.
That's great. I saw the applicant online a second ago, or the applicant's agent. Perhaps we could get that question answered now. I think knowing where something's going to be located is technical. Highly technical.
Highly.
If he's not on right now, Mr. Mayor, would you be prepared to just revisit that with him when he's
Absolutely.
on? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other technical questions?
Mr. Chair, sorry, I can't, I guess my camera, I can't turn my camera on, but I am here.
Okay,
and
did you hear the mayor's question?
I can say to the mayor that we don't have a precise location for the food store at this point. It's not going in the new buildings that are under construction. They're already leased out. This was more of a longer term endeavor. And if we were going to look at any specific site, it could be kind of the national sports because that's kind of a tenant that's not, maybe that's going to be replaced. But we don't really have it nailed down at this point. It's kind of a longer term investment for us.
So to be clear, from a technical standpoint, Chair, we're not talking about adding buildings beyond what are existing on the current site.
That's correct, sir.
There we go.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Thank you. Any further technical questions? There being none, we will go to the public. We'll start with the applicant. If you have anything you wish to say, Mr. Kirkness?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I mean, and members of the public, Catherine done a bang-up job on the report. It's certainly in line with what we applied for, and we agree with it, and we hope the planning committee does too. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkness. Any Anybody further from the public that it doesn't appear so. So I'll just ask for public input once, twice. No input, so we'll make a motion to close the public participation meeting, moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Mayor Holder. Unless there's something further, I'll call the vote.
I'll vote yes, Chair.
Councillor Hillier, please.
I vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion.
Very much. I'll turn the matter over to the committee. I don't know, maybe we should get a motion. Move the staff recommendation, moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Mayor Holder. Any questions or comments from the committee? Councillor Lehman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if this is a technical question or not. Through you to staff, Chair. Just to educate me on why a food store would not already be included in that specific zoning. What are the concerns of zoning that would specifically exclude a food store? And would those concerns be alleviated in this particular instance?
Go see if someone from staff would like to answer that.
Mr. Chair, it's Michael Thomas-Insick here. We did some research on as to why supermarkets were explicitly prohibited, or at least not included on this site. And it goes back to an Ontario Municipal Board hearing in the 90s. And the only thing that we could surmise, because that's already over 20 years old, is that it was a settlement with the lands across the street through the Ontario Municipal Board that use wouldn't be permitted on the site, and it allowed the zoning to go ahead. But we were satisfied that the use on this site is in conformity with the official plan, and it makes sense at this location. And we hadn't heard any opposition from any neighboring property owners, including the grocery store on the other side of the street.
Thank you. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to staff and the applicant's consultant for being here. And I was just reviewing the planning history and trying to get a better understanding why it is at planning today, and just looking at the process that we've sort of undertaken with this application, increasing the commercial space and sort of starting off with 17,000 square meters approximately, and now we're looking at almost 18. And I'm just kind of wondering why we are at planning and why it didn't originally come to planning. Just want to have a better understanding of the process that this applicant has gone through.
Go ahead, staff.
Forgive me, Matt, members of PEC, if I misunderstood the question, but the reason it's at PEC and not the Committee of Adjustment, was that the question regarding that small adjustment in the gross floor area?
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, so that would be part of the question, but the other part of the question was around the process, that it's already gone to committee 2 times, increasing the square footage for the commercial space. I'm just wondering why it didn't originally come here. I'm just trying to understand the application process here.
I see. Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks for the clarification. So the reason it went through the Committee of Adjustment initially is because it was an expansion of floor area only. And those types of applications, since it's a regulation, could be processed through the Committee of Adjustment. The reason it's here before you today, though, is because we're adding a use, and we don't add uses through minor variances. We add those through zoning.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think we're also doing an increase as well to the square footage, or am I reading the report wrong? Sorry.
Mr. Chair, that's absolutely correct. We're also doing an increase in floor area, but it's just a modest increase in floor area to recognize patios that exist with the restaurants, not in addition to building floor area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from the committee? Okay, this is moved and seconded then. I'll call the vote.
Chair, I'll vote yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hopkins. Sorry. Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
There are no items, no deferred matters, additional business, so I just need a mover and seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Lewis, happy to do that. Seconded by Councillor Hopkins. We'll just do a hand vote unless someone objects. That's it. We are adjourned, and we will see you all tomorrow at SPPC.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.